The Sugar-Coated Language of White Fragility by Anna Kegler. For a while now, I've been thinking about terms like white privilege, inclusion, and unconscious bias. All sound just too nice. Don't these seem a little on the pleasant side for words used to address a system of racist oppression? It reminds me of how in Minnesota in January, the meteorologist will say it's going to be a cool evening as they stand in front of a map showing temperatures that will literally freeze your nostrils together when you take a breath. Something's definitely up. The language we use to talk about racism is obviously distorted, a big clue that something is being hidden. It's pretty easy to pinpoint the source. Most white people can't handle talking about racism. We flail, we don't understand the subject, we get really uncomfortable, and we either clam up because we don't want to say the wrong thing, or we bust out white speaking. I'm writing this piece with the understanding that some white people will be more likely to listen to me because I am white. This is part of the underlying problem of white fragility. White fragility is the thing that restricts our knowledge, shuts down conversations before they start, and invites us to lie to ourselves. Dr. Robin DiAngelo, a white critical racial and social justice educator who created the term white fragility, breaks it down like this. White fragility is a state in which even a minimum amount of racial stress becomes intolerable, triggering a range of defensive moves. These moves include the outward display of emotions such as anger, fear, and guilt, and behaviors such as argumentation, silence, and leaving the stress-inducing situation. As an illustration of the above, let's look at Donald Trump. Trump is known for speaking in vague generalities and declaring simplistic solutions for complex problems. He avoids policy and fact-based conversations and gets angry and disgusted at the drop of a hat. Now imagine that when it comes to conversations on race, white people in America act a lot like Donald Trump. We generally lack knowledge, but we always have an opinion. We lack the skill set for nuanced conversations, so we pretend they aren't necessary. When we can't avoid, we deflect, or we get upset. We're thin-skinned. Terms like inclusion and white privilege are designed to sneak past the racial stress triggers of white fragility. Our overly pleasant terms are the spoonful of sugar that makes the medicine go down. When you're sick, do you still need a spoonful of sugar? Probably not, because you understand how medicine works. You'll expect some bitterness and be fine with it because you want to get better. The person who needs a spoonful of sugar doesn't even know they need it. They have not developed an understanding for why they feel bad or what will fix it. If the medicine doesn't taste good, they'll spit it out. They'll wonder, why are you punishing me with this terrible tasting thing? And when the next time comes, you better be really slick with the sugar, because if they suspect you're trying to hide bitterness, even if they really, really want to feel better, they'll clamp their teeth shut. Once they're onto you, oops, it's time to be more creative. I'm going to run through a few terms and briefly outline some thoughts on the relative sweetness of the terminology and the degree to which white audiences have caught on to the sleight of hand. While I might throw out some examples of alternative terms for the purpose of contrast, I'm not seriously trying to propose new terms here. White fragility has to shift before the language can shift. To start effecting that shift, we can think more critically about what words we're using now and why. The word diversity is really common when people are talking about hiring. It started out as a neutral word, meaning variety. It's supposed to describe a group. But somewhere along the way, people started referring to individual people as diverse, like, we're looking for a diverse candidate for the role. So diverse is now code for person of color or woman. White supremacy, things we call supreme, the most delicious desserts, the most well-known and glamorous Motown singers. The highest court in the land, God. White supremacy is a system that prioritizes whiteness, regardless of the presence or absence of racial hatred. But a white supremacist is a person who embraces overt racial hatred. It's like a spectrum. By default, all white people are on the spectrum of complicity in upholding a system of white supremacy. But we only give the negative label of white supremacists to the really hateful people at the far end. This allows us to say, we're not them. White privilege is a term popularized by Peggy McIntosh in the late 1980s. While white privilege is the term that stuck, many scholars and feminists of color have been discussing the same ideas, particularly in the context of intersectionality. When we ask ourselves why privilege was so catchy among white people, it's pretty obvious. Inclusion. Diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance. So diversity is the hiring part, and inclusion is the making sure your employees don't find themselves in a hostile environment and leave part. The thing that bugs me about inclusion is that it sounds like a neutral word, but it's not. It begs the question, who is including who? Who does this space belong to? White fragility is the newest of these terms, and I chose to frame this piece around it because while it's new and flashy, it's not so sweet. It positions whiteness as weak and lacking instead of privileged or supreme, while acknowledging the damage and violence this fragility has the power to cause. But while I think the term white fragility is less sweet than some of the former terms, I'm not letting it off the hook. It is still a term invented by a white person for other white people. What things are fragile? Newborn babies, fine china, snowflakes. Fragile things are usually valuable and they need protection. Here we go again. The good thing about the word fragility is that it pisses people off to be called fragile instead of strong or resilient. It pokes at insecurity, revealing something that has real destructive power to be built on a house of cards. Racism today doesn't look the way it did in 1865 or 1965 or 2000. It stays alive by shape-shifting over time. The only way forward is to step outside of it. If the occasional workplace event like this one were enough to address all the insidious ways racism persists, white supremacy would already be over, and it's not. No one is going to give you the education you need to overthrow them. To that, I would like to add, the education white people need will make us uncomfortable. We've had all the basic ideas we've needed to understand racism for a long time. The real problem is that we white people expect to be served knowledge about race and racism in palatable doses. The solution? Put in work. We are not newborn babies or fancy teacups. Many white people ask me why we haven't gotten further in racial understanding or increasing the diversity in our workplace and lives. Sometimes they don't like my response. Not enough white people have done their work. The work of seeing the barriers to true meritocracy. The work of putting themselves in the shoes of black people to learn more about their experiences and perceptions. The work of understanding how being white has shaped their worldview and self-perceptions. The work of gaining the skills of deciphering and managing cross-racial and cultural dynamics. That's a lot of work. But without it, you cannot create fundamental change in your sphere of influence. We need to stop trying to be good people and start trying to be real people. What will your next step be?
Thank you.